guys, my name is Courtney Rose and I wanted to do a little video series on tips and tricks of navigating your way through college while living with type 1 diabetes. Just a little bit of background about myself. I graduated from college in May of 2019. While I was in school, I worked for the Student Alumni Association. I worked in the bookstore. I was a campus ambassador and gave tours. And I also started the College Diabetes Network chapter on my campus. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in May of 2013. Since then, I've really tried to get involved in the diabetes community. I've written a lot of articles for the College Diabetes Network and Beyond Type 1. I was an intern for the American Diabetes Association. I've helped out with some diabetes podcasts. So I've really tried to get involved. And one of the main things I saw was people weren't really sure of what to do when going off to college. So I hope that this series really helps you out. So for the first video, I wanted to go over packing to go off to college. And one of the first things that my parents and I did before heading off to school was we started accumulating all of the information we possibly could about my personal type 1 diabetes, and we put it all in a binder. So in the binder, we have kind of all of my doctor's information and cell phone numbers. Just gathered all the information that I might possibly need when I'm away at school. The first section was all phone numbers for really important contacts for me to have. So it had my family listed out as emergency contacts and what their phone numbers were. It had all of my doctors that, are on my diabetic nurse team. And then we also had out all the pharmacist phone numbers and how to reorder supplies. And then we had a section that had emergency phone numbers for my university that had campus security, RA, any kind of important contact that could be useful. We did this for myself, but also for any of my friends if they ever needed anything or needed to get in touch with anyone. Along with the friend thing, I also had a couple of sheets that showed the symptoms of high and low blood sugars so that they could kind of better understand what those would look like and what to do in the case that you are having a really high or low blood sugar. And then I also had my settings on my insulin pump in case I ever went back to injections. I would know kind of what my 24-hour insulin would look like and what my short acting would be. I had a couple of those worksheets that showed you how to do out your full calculations so that, again, if I ever went off the pump, I would kind of have a refresher on how to do that. And then I also had an area on sick day information and what to do if you have ketones or if you think you have ketones, how to manage that. Just so that, again, I would have access to it. If my parents ever needed to reference anything, I would have it handy to give to them. Or if any of my friends were really intrigued to learn more about what it takes to live with type 1 diabetes, I was able to share it with them as well. So the next thing that we looked at was prescriptions. And one of the first things that we did with that was make sure that all of my prescriptions were renewed and up to date. And then we tried to figure out how we were going to get them to campus. So I ended up living close enough to school that I still had all my supplies that were mail order sent to my house. And then every couple months, my parents would come up and visit. But you are also able to work with your university and either have those sent to a local pharmacy or sent to a health services center. So it's all about figuring out what works best for you in that sense. Again, a month or so before, we kind of went through and took inventory of what I had on stash for pump supplies, CGM supplies, transmitters, anything like that. And we made sure that I had enough to get through at least a couple months of school so that I would have enough to utilize. And then I also switched over all of my pharmacy prescriptions from my house to the closest one to my school so that I would be able to pick those up. The next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is storing your supplies on campus and in your dorm. So when I was figuring out what I needed, I ended up ordering an extra large fridge. Those micro fridges come in handy. You can microwave food, you can store things. I stored a ton of low supplies and my insulin in my fridge. I actually stored my insulin in a nice little Vera Bradley lunchbox. Originally going into school, I locked my lunchbox just because I didn't really know anyone going into school. I didn't know who my roommates were going to be. I didn't know who I was going to be hanging out with, who was going to be coming in and out of the room. So just for my own peace of mind, I locked it, I think, for like the first couple months, and then I met everyone, and everyone was so nice that I ended up just not locking. But just as kind of precaution, if it'll give you more peace of mind, I say do it. If it doesn't really matter to you, not a big deal. One of the first things that I did when I actually moved in was I Velcroed a glucagon above my door, and a couple of years I did it above my closet, but just so there was one central location that I always had a glucagon ready and available so that I was aware of where it was, and whoever I was living with at the time knew exactly where it was, just in case of an emergency. I never ended up needing it, but again, it's always good to have that just in case, and it's always good to have someone else who knows where it is in case you do need it. The next thing that I bought to store my supplies in my dorm was a lot of plastic containers. So I ended up getting one of those 3-drawer plastic wheel containers, and in that top drawer, I went through and I figured out what I would need. So I put all the supplies that I need for one pump change in a little plastic bag, and I set up a ton of those because college is super spontaneous. So if I was running low on insulin, or if I was going off campus and I just wanted to be safe, I could always grab an extra 1 or 2 and throw it in my bag, just so I was never in a situation where I needed insulin and wasn't able to give it, or if my pump malfunctioned or anything like that. Always good to be prepared. So I had those all in the top drawer of the plastic container. The middle drawer is where I kept some basic extra supplies, like I had my test strips, my ketone strips, my backup meters, lancets, alcohol swabs, and I also use Tagaderm, which is a skin adhesive for continuous glucose monitor. So I used that, and I stock ordered it, and I kept those in that middle drawer as well. And the bottom drawer, I kept a box or 2 of my pump supplies and my CGM supplies, however much would fit. And then I just had a giant plastic container of extra supplies that I kept under my bed, just of boxes of everything. I also, just because I know myself, and in case I ever did run out of supplies, I got a lock box and I put an extra box of everything in here. I had pump, CGM, I had test strips, I had syringes, I had lancets. So in the event that I ever had anything that was expired, or I totally ran out of something without realizing it and no one was able to get me anything, I had kind of an emergency backup plan for that. So much for tuning in. I hope that this kind of helped alleviate some of your stresses or concerns about moving off to college and packing. Please stay tuned. I'm going to be uploading kind of 1 video a week. I'm going to go over talking to your roommate, communicating with your parents, drinking in college, the dining halls, eating, how to talk to your professors, different important topics like that. So please stay tuned. And if you'd like, you can follow me on Instagram at faultypancreas13. And please let me know if there's anything else that you guys like to hear about, anything that you loved. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.